What if Celebi was in Gen 1 OU? I'm gonna be real with you. When I first looked at Celebi's move pool in Gen 2, I was very worried about his chances in RBY. Because at first, I only saw Psychic and Recover, so then I wondered just what other moves it could possibly have. I remembered Hyper Beam, and that's a decent start. Having a good physical move, and having Psychic with Stab. But I really struggled to find a good fourth move. I considered Swift, because I just couldn't find any other physical moves. There was Leech Seed, but that seemed kind of pointless since you already have Recover. There was Toxic, and trust me, that I got very close to including that. But thankfully, I found a move that at first seemed like a filler slot, but ended up being one of its most important tools, and that's Defense Curl. This move helps Celebi tremendously. But before we get on to that, let's go over the obvious. Psychic and RBY, it's really, really good. But to add on to that, it has the grass typing. Now thankfully, you're not really in competition with Exeggutor, because the two of you are doing pretty different things, all things considered. Exeggutor is booming and then going for Sleep Powder, or obviously the order is vice versa, but you get what I mean. Celebi, I can't exactly say what it does outside of just tank hits and outlast things, but it's really good at doing that. With 100 in every stat, Celebi here has the stats to tank pretty much everything. The only thing it struggles with is stab ice moves and crits. Tauros, for example, its Blizzard, I believe, is a 3-hit KO, but that's part of what makes Psychic so good on here. The only things you're really worried about are ice moves and a critical hit from Zapdos' Drill Pack. And thankfully, Psychic at least helps in one of those. To be able to lower the special on Jinx, Cloyster, Tauros, or especially Chansey, kind of removes them as a threat. Or not completely, because depending on the speed set, they could still be a problem. Same with Stab, Freeze, Crits, etc. But Psychic really helps you out there. And Defense Curl is basically doing the exact same thing. Now, this isn't the first time I used Defense Curl. The first time I ever saw it, or use it that was good, was my council member Zacian Theus using it on Pecharunt. Pecharunt has a weakness to Earthquake, but it already has super high defense, and when using Defense Curl, it pretty much nulls out its weakness to a Pokemon like Tauros using Earthquake, and makes it pretty much unkillable. Celebi is very similar, and in some ways kind of better, since it inherently has a better defensive typing. Sure, it's not immune to normal, but you also just have better stats all around. Your defense isn't higher, but you do have higher HP. So against Pokemon like Snorlax, things that you're faster than, you go for Defense Curl and they don't really have a way to hurt you anymore. Especially since Amnesia Wax is more so just a gimmick now and not something that can be taken seriously. Defense Curl even helps you against Zapdos. Against Zapdos, it's a speed tie and Zapdos can crit, so I would try to avoid it if you can. But if you have to, Defense Curl can actually help you win the War of Attrition, assuming you don't get crit. And you have the exact same crit rate that Zapdos does, and Psychic is already 4-hit KO, and special drops and crits only makes killing Zapdos even easier, so it is far from an uneven fight. And this is what I find so interesting about Celebi. If I use Nat Dex, and for tournaments in my server, we would use Nat Dex, and for a revisited video, I'd use Nat Dex, you would get significantly better tools, such as Sword Stance and Double Edge. But I kind of like this right here. I just think it's a really solid Pokemon. And Defense Curl is part of the reason that you can do that. This is part of the reason why not only do I go with original movesets, but also why I love to just try to make them work. Because you get unique things like this, and it's so RBY coded to me, and I just love it. But how good does Celebi do against the rest of the meta? Only one way to find out. Starting off with the boy himself, we got Tauros. Wizard hits pretty hard, but thank goodness you have Recover, because that is like your big saving point. And because of your stats, it's not like Tauros can Wizard you into Hyper Beam range either. It needs a crit or a freeze, which is easier said than done, especially when Celebi hits pretty hard. It can always get a special drop at any point. I'm still gonna call it a could go either way, but I'm gonna say slightly more in Celebi's favor. And this is just straight up a good matchup. Only reason I'm not gonna put it in great is because Paralysis is annoying, and because you can always be using a mixed attacking wax with Ice Beam. Although with 100 special and 100 HP, I'm not sure Ice Beam is really doing that much. Especially with Psychic. Psychic, you will get a special drop eventually. And I personally feel comfortable with Celebi outlasting Ice Beams with Recover as long as you don't get frozen. That's just my opinion. And the funny thing here is the fact that Snorlax can't even go for Self-Destruct, since with that defense stat, Celebi is most certainly surviving it. So there's really not really good answers for Snorlax. You would need Amnesia Ice Beam exactly, but that in of itself has a lot of issues. Like for example, the fact that it just inherently loses the Starmie. So let's keep going. Now for Chansey versus Celebi, we are putting this in Hyper Fast, because of special drops, Ice Beam isn't actually the most consistent way to beat Celebi. Because with Recover in the bulk, Celebi is capable of surviving and then using Recover and trying to fish for the special drop. And once Celebi can get that special drop, suddenly it is a really bad war of attrition where both are completely capable of stalling the other out. Celebi can absolutely stall out all of the Seismic Toss power points, especially with Thunder Wave, like making you lose turns. And Chansey, on the other hand, can either win by really bad Paraluck or getting a crit on Ice Beam. As you can imagine, this is miserable. And even though it's in Hyper Fast, as you can see, we are on turn 38. And this is one of the moments where Celebi really just struggles from not having better attacking moves. You have Hyper Beam, but since Chansey isn't also paralyzed, Hyper Beam can't really be used outside of just forcing Celebi to forcing Chansey to go for more healing. If you crit and get like an OHKO with Hyper Beam, that's nice, but it's not really in your favor. So here we had a 57 turn game where Chansey lost all of its Seismic Tosses, only has one Soft Boiled, and sure it has Ice Beams left, but look at that special. So honestly, could go either way, but in this scenario, even though the Celebi died, the Chansey is basically useless, let's be real. So it kind of won in the end as well. Now, this is not the most accurate Zam replay in the world, but I just decided to go with it afterwards, because of how long the Chansey replay went. Celebi can fish for special drops, and for Zam, it technically could as well, but if you ask me, it's probably better off just going for Paralysis and then Seismic Toss. But Hyper Beam is a lot more usable here, since I don't think Reflect Zam is very good. And if anything, it's kind of really bad here, since Celebi probably is going to last longer when it comes to Psychic special drops. But overall, could go either way. Zam probably wins most of them, but Celebi being able to win at any point with a critical Hyper Beam is something you have to respect. Now for Cloyster, thank Arceus that you are faster, because that is like the only thing saving you from being eaten alive. Special drop is very, very needed here, because unfortunately you don't have Mega Drain. So an even fight, but one that's very dangerous, you have to be very careful with. I'd argue just avoid it entirely, but to be fair, it's not like Cloyster particularly likes the matchup either. Now, Exeggutor vs Celebi is very similar to Chansey vs Celebi, But the difference here is that Celebi has more consistent options to deal with Executor. When it comes to special drops, you're both just kind of even. And Double Edge, you would think would be a good gotcha, but because of Defense Curl, it's not really a good option. And if anything, Double Edge is bad because of the recoil. When it comes to special drops, both hate that a lot, and it's completely RNG up to that point. But even if Celebi gets unlucky, the big game changer here is that Celebi has Recover, while Executor does not. So even if Executor gets some special drops too, because of Celebi's higher stats overall with, higher defense and HP and special, Celebi can afford to survive and try to go for the special drops, putting them more in an even playing field. And when that happens, Celebi can either go for Hyper Beam, which will easily kill the Executor, or like you see here, with the help of Defense Curl, can survive an Executor forced to go for Explosion. Because Celebi hates in the matchup, especially if it's paralyzed, I don't think I'm going to put it in great matchup, but honestly, it's doing pretty well. Now, this is one of the most hilarious replays I have ever had, because Celebi hard counters every single thing Gengar can possibly do. Recover completely nullifies Nightshade. In between Mega Drain, Thunderbolt, Psychic, and Nightshade, this is literally the only one that does damage. And Celebi can just completely not give a shit. Essentially, Celebi here is... This, I'm going to argue, is an even bigger, one-sided fight than Zapdos versus Rhydon. Because at least with that, at least Drillpeck can do something. And even though Nightshade's technically doing more damage, it's basically completely nullified by Celebi's Recover. And with Defense Curl, it's not like Explosion's doing much either. And even if Gengar went for Explosion immediately, due to Celebi's high stats, I'm assuming it's going to survive without a crit. And due to Celebi's speed, it's probably going to get a Recover off once you pivot and all that. So yeah, funny. Here's the second funniest replay. Now, Celebi's going to struggle a bit at the beginning, but Hidden Missile is your only option against Celebi, since Celebi resists both Double Kick and Thunderbolt. And just like normal Executor, you can get a crit hit for 5 or 4, which would kill it, I'm pretty sure. But the difference between Celebi and Executor is Defense Curl. Oh, and Recover, that's also a big deal. So, it's just really funny. And I know Jolteon has a good crit rate, but at the same time, like you saw there, Pin Missile is not the most accurate move in the world. And even if it does hit, it's not guaranteed to hit for 5, nor is it always guaranteed the crit. So with Defense Curl, you pretty comfortably take this. And you can argue even without Defense Curl, you probably take it. But I think in general, it's just good to use, because it means there's really not a lot of stuff that can afford to really switch into you. Or take you on, I mean. Outside of, well, Ice types. And just like Cloyster, it's really, really good that you're faster. A Special Drop could be the thing that helps you, although it's not as consistent here. But at the same time, Jinx is also way more susceptible to Hyper Beam. So, I'm going to call it a good grade either way, although it's probably in Jinx's favor. Now, Rhydon. Again, another really funny tech thing. Leer would probably lose a lot of merit if Celebi was in the format. And what's even funnier is that you just inherently have more power points. Because Leer has, I think, well, we can see right here. It has 24 compared to 61 of Defense Curl. That is honestly insane. So yeah, Rhydon, regardless if it's Rock Slide, or regardless if it's, Leer Body Slam, Celebi is just completely free to go for as many Defense Curls as it wants. So that as long as all the Ice types are taken care of, Celebi becomes basically unkillable. Because Fire Blast isn't very common. So Celebi with Defense boost, meaning that normal moves aren't really hurting it. Also meaning that it has a real shot at beating Zapdos. Yeah, it's kind of rough if you're basically anything else. But I kind of love it for that. Now, ironically, this is the one true counter to Celebi in the game, and it's a water type, as weird as it is. But Amnesia, yeah, with Paralysis, it's just too annoying. Very interesting, though, is the fact that even with Max Special, you don't 2-hit KO Celebi. So you're gonna see, in fact, let's just put it on fast, because there's not too much to this replay. But you can theoretically stall out Stirps. The big issue here is, obviously, Paralysis. Paralysis means that inevitably you're probably gonna die, which is very unfortunate. And no matter what I'm calling this the fact that you can theoretically stall out Surf is maybe a bad, but I'm pretty sure there's, like, basically no world you can realistically do that. Granted, an occasional crit, and more so the fact that it's a 3-hit KO, might make it to where it's more likely than I think, but I'm really assuming the math just isn't there. Especially since for some of these damage ranges, you actually are getting a 2-hit KO, which is a really, really big deal. But I don't think it's super likely either. It doesn't matter though, because sooner or later, Paralysis will jam Celebi. So congratulations, Slowbro. You can do that at least. But I'm not sure if it would be enough to put you in OU. Second to last is Starmie. For this replay, we just went with Blizzard. But obviously, there's Thunderbolt, Surf, Psychic. Literally every other move Starmie cannot do anything with. So it's just Blizzard. But unfortunately, with Blizzard, even with your special jobs, if you get hit with Psychic, Starmie has a really good crit rate. So I'm just putting this and could go either way and calling it a day. It really just depends on Starmie's moveset and what it's using. And at the same time, I think it also really matters how much it used Blizzard power points up until that point. Because Celebi has teammates, so it can very easily pivot. And with only 8 Blizzard PP, that can be taken advantage of pretty... It's not pretty. Yeah. But last and not least, we have Zapdos. I already talked about how this one kind of goes. And with the speed tie, it could be very dangerous, but in general, Defense Curl gives you a real shot here. And a better shot than if you were just using, like, let's say, Sword Stance. Because it actually allows you to take less from those super effective Drill Pecks. And once you're no longer taking as much damage from a super effective attack, because you have just naturally good stats in bulk, you can pretty easily handle this. The only thing that kills you is just a crit. But you're equally as likely to get a crit on Zapdos. So I'm not sure if Zapdos wants to deal with this. Especially if the Zapdos is paralyzed. Granted, if it already has an agility up, or I guess even then you still need to fish for a crit, but even in this circumstance, there's so many other jobs Zapdos have to do. Zapdos can't be expected to sweep against Celebi and Chansey. One or the other. It needs to get crits on both, and one of them will probably chip it down until it dies. So overall, Celebi pretty much exceeded my expectations. And this can probably move the great matchups, honestly. Celebi did pretty good, and this was with a move pool that I originally thought was lackluster. But it really showed me just how just one move can really change a Pokemon. And Defense Curl is pretty cool. I honestly hope I find more Pokemon that can make use of Defense Curl. Because Pecharunt and Celebi have been some of my favorite videos so far. I'm not going to go out of my way to find one. Nor am I going to, put in Defense Curl, but there's obviously a better move you can be using. But overall, this is fun. And I don't know what I'm going to do for tomorrow, but one thing I will say is the Infinite Fusion season of, I guess you can call it, or tournament, going to be starting very soon. So definitely join my Discord server if you're interested in that. And by the way, we don't just have, rules for participating. If you just want to, see the usage rates, or see tier lists, or just watch other people play, we have rules for that as well in the server. I'd love to see you there. But until next time, this is Groundback, and I look forward to hearing from you.